14 CFR Part 91.103. Every time we fly, we're going to brief this checklist here, and so we're going to start today. N stands for NOTAMs, or notices to air missions, and W stands for weather. And I've already got a weather brief pulled up for us, and it looks like we do have a couple of airmets. Here's our table of contents. If you want to jump to something specific, you can go through here, but we're just going to go from top to bottom. There are no TFRs, or temporary flight restrictions. There are no closed or unsafe NOTAMs. There's no convective SIGMETs, usually indicative of like thunderstorm activity. No SIGMETs, and there are airmets for IFR conditions in our area, and it ends 1 minute before our flight is estimated to reach the area. So we're gonna start our flight right as this airmet ends. So that's kind of cool. This airmet will be active while we fly. Let's see, there's also airmet for mountain obscuration. So there will be clouds low enough to obscure mountains in our airspace, like Mount Rainier, Mount Baker, and the Cascades. There's also an airmet for icing out to the east. We won't be in it, but it looks pretty close, so we'll want to keep an eye on where the freezing level is and if we're flying through any visible precipitation or visible moisture. Here's our freezing levels between 4,000 and 9,000 feet here, from the surface to 10,000 feet here. There's no turbulence, low altitude turbulence. There is a high altitude turbulence airmet right in our area. There's no strong surface winds, no low level wind shear, no urgent PIREPs, and no center weather advisories, no severe weather, no volcanic ash. And it does look like there is a high pressure system off the west coast. Remember that high pressure tends to rotate clockwise and downward. So you will probably be seeing winds rotating clockwise around this high pressure system. All right, here's our METAR, which is our meteorological aerodrome report. It's the hourly weather at different airports. So at Painfield, it is currently low IFR, haze, with winds from 230 at 4 knots, half-mile visibility, runway 16 right, visual range is greater than 6,000 feet, and the ceiling is overcast at 2,000 feet. So if we were VFR today, we would not be able to fly. The weather is below my personal minimums for VFR flight and below legal minimums. En route, we also have marginal VFR and some IFR through Friday Harbor. Ceilings as low as 900 feet. So ceilings are a little low today, but I think they're going to burn off. Next, we've got our PIREPs. These are pilot reports, anything that a pilot might have reported saying, hey, there is some weather that is different from what was forecasted, or we encountered some weather that I think is important for others to know. And it looks like we do have negative turbulence in this area here. And here, negative turbulence, and looks like trace to light icing. And you can read exactly where they are here. So overpaying on the 160 radial at 1 mile. And Embraer said the cloud conditions were, or the sky conditions were overcast at 800 feet. All right, looks like flight category. Here's your legend. So it's marginal VFR in this area here. Marginal VFR. Marginal VFR. Ceilings will likely be 2,000 feet. And you can see, I mean, there's a bunch of these. We're not going to spend too much time on it. Visibility is going to be VFR later, so that's cool. Cloud cover. Few at 600, broken at 2,600. Overcast at 3,500, tops at 7,000. And you can interpret these on your own. We'll move on. Precipitation, a little bit of fog. Cool. Thunder coverage, nothing in our area. That's good. Like to see that. Winds 5 knots from the northwest. Cool. And the freezing level is pretty low. 3,000 to 5,000 feet or so. What's the temperature at the field? Yeah, it looks like the terminal aerodrome forecast, which is by definition a forecast of what we expect to see later. It's going to be marginal VFR. Winds 340 at 6, greater than 6 miles visibility, scattered at 800, ceiling broken at 1,500. And you can see for different airfields and different times, you'll get different forecasts. The winds aloft, tells us our wind direction, velocity, and temperature at different altitudes. At 3,000 feet near SeaTac, winds are 010 at 9 knots. As you go up in altitude, it's going to get colder. So at 5,000 feet, it'll become, or correction, at 6,000 feet, it'll be -7 degrees Celsius. At 9,000, it's -6 degrees Celsius. Oh, interesting. Yep, -11 at 12,000 feet. So typically, as you go higher in altitude, it will get colder. Next, no thunderstorm activity, so that's cool. So, down here, Louisiana, general risk of thunderstorms. And our departure NOTAMs. Again, these are notices to air missions, anything that might be pertinent to our flight that didn't make it into the publications. For example, Payne VOR DME is unserviceable from January 13th, 09 local to 1500 local, and that's tomorrow. So that should not affect our flight today if we're flying. There are obstructions around Payne. There is an obstruction tower, 674.9 feet above sea level, 150.9 feet above ground level. We really shouldn't be flying that low anyway, but it's good to know. All right, and there's a few of these. Obstruction light, obstruction pole light, obstruction crane, and there's a few more. At Kenmore Air Harbor, there's drone activity, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. More drone stuff. Flight Data Center, or FDC NOTAMs. These tell us about procedure stuff. So it looks like ILS Yankee or localizer Yankee for runway 16 right, Amendment 2.3. The procedure is not authorized except for aircraft equipped with suitable RNAV system with GPS because the Payne VOR DME is out of service. Now, a lot of these are coded and kind of difficult to read. So my suggestion for you is to pull up a weather brief daily and see how the weather progresses throughout the day or throughout the week, and practice interpreting these notices to air missions or NOTAMs because they get easier to interpret with practice. That covers our NOTAMs and weather. Next, we're going to go to our known delays. I like map view because it's easy to interpret. Nothing in our area, but if there were, we could go to the list view and see what is delaying aircraft. For example, LAS is closed to non-scheduled transient general aviation aircraft. There's a departure delay at ATL, de-icing. Next, runways. Payne has 2 runways, a 9,000 foot and a 3,000 foot runway. We're going to be using a 3,000 foot runway. Alternates, if we can't make it home, where are we going to go? We've got, so if Payne is here, we've got Arlington up here and Harvey down here. So if we're going to Lake Stevens to practice, we have 2 alternates if the Russians take out Payne Field. A fuel, we need to calculate our fuel for the flight and add an additional 30 minutes at cruise. Legally, of course, you want to add your own personal minimums. 30 minutes is not a lot of time to be loitering if you have to divert. And then finally, T, takeoff and landing distances. That will be in your pilot operating handbook, and you'll brief me on our distance for takeoff and landings before we go fly. All right, so that's our 14 CFR 91.103.